The cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow as the aircraft leveled off at cruising altitude. Outside the windows, clouds stretched endlessly beneath a pale blue sky. Inside, the gentle hum of engines blended with quiet conversations, the rustle of magazines, and the occasional chime from the galley. It was supposed to be a routine flight. Families adjusted blankets. A couple leaned together, sharing earbuds. A businessman typed steadily on his laptop, already halfway into tomorrow's meetings. No one expected anything more than a few hours in the air and a normal landing. At the front of the cabin, a flight attendant moved down the aisle with practiced ease. Her name badge read, Lena. She wore the standard uniform, neatly pressed, sleeves crisp, hair secured into a simple, professional style. Her expression was calm, attentive, almost invisible in the way the best cabin crew often are. She checked seatbelts, offered quiet smiles, and helped an elderly passenger stow a small bag. To everyone around her, she was exactly what she appeared to be. Just a flight attendant. What no one knew was that Lena's calm wasn't learned in customer service training. It was learned somewhere else entirely. She paused briefly at row 14, glancing toward the cockpit door. Not staring, just noting. Her eyes moved the way they always had, observing patterns, behaviors, small details most people missed. Years of habit. A child laughed a few rows back. A call button chimed softly. The plane felt normal, safe. Lena continued her checks. As she passed row 22, she noticed something subtle. Two men seated apart, not together, yet sharing quick, controlled glances. Their movements were restrained, deliberate. Not nervous, focused. She didn't react. She never reacted quickly. Instead, she filed the observation away, the way she had been trained to do long ago. She adjusted her pace, keeping her breathing even, her expression unchanged. In the galley, another attendant poured coffee. Everything good? Her colleague asked quietly. Lena nodded. So far. She picked up a stack of cups, steady hands, no rush. Her pulse remained slow, controlled. Stress had a way of revealing itself in the body. Hers stayed disciplined. As she returned to the aisle, the cabin announcement chimed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've reached cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign is now off, though we recommend keeping it fastened while seated. A few passengers unbuckled immediately. Someone stood to retrieve a bag. The plane felt relaxed. Then it happened. Not loudly, not dramatically, just, wrong. Voices rose near the middle of the cabin. Sharp, commanding, out of place. Lena stopped walking. She didn't turn right away. She listened. A sudden tension spread, felt more than heard. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The casual noise of flight evaporated into a brittle quiet. Passengers looked around, confused. Lena turned slowly. Two figures now stood in the aisle, posture rigid, attention fixed forward. Their presence shifted the air itself. Whatever they said next wasn't clear to everyone, but the tone was unmistakable. Authority, forced and unnatural. Fear followed it like a shadow. A woman gasped. A man stiffened in his seat. Somewhere, a phone clattered to the floor. Lena felt none of the panic rising around her. She felt clarity. Her mind narrowed, the way it always did when chaos threatened. The cabin, the aisle, the distance to the cockpit, everything mapped itself automatically. She noticed exits, angles, lines of sight, but she did nothing. Not yet, because reacting too early was a mistake. She lowered her gaze slightly, becoming smaller, less noticeable. She stepped back into the galley as if responding to a routine task. To anyone watching, she was just another crew member following procedure. Inside, she listened. Her breathing stayed slow. Her shoulders relaxed. She remembered another cockpit, another uniform, another life. The weight of responsibility that came with training meant for moments exactly like this. The difference now was the setting. This wasn't a combat zone. It was a cabin full of civilians. And that changed everything. Lena placed the cups down carefully. She glanced at the emergency manual, not to read it, but to confirm its position. Everything had a place. Everything mattered. In the cabin, the raised voices continued. Instructions were being given. Confusion spread. Fear took hold. Lena stepped back into the aisle. Her expression was neutral, professional, calm. No one noticed the slight change in her eyes, the quiet focus that settled there. No one knew that beneath the uniform stood someone who had spent years learning how to stay composed when others couldn't. And no one yet understood that the most dangerous thing on that flight was not panic, but calm, the kind that waits. The tension in the cabin thickened like heavy air before a storm. Passengers sat frozen, eyes darting from seat to seat, trying to understand what was happening without daring to fully accept it. The two men in the aisle spoke again, short, clipped instructions delivered with forced confidence. Their words carried authority, but not experience. Lena noticed that immediately. Real authority didn't need to shout. She stood a few steps back, hands folded naturally in front of her, posture relaxed. To the passengers nearby, she looked like a flight attendant waiting for the right moment to intervene or receive instructions. To the men in the aisle, she was invisible. Exactly as she intended. A middle-aged man near the window whispered something to his wife. She shook her head quickly, eyes wide, pressing her lips together to keep from crying. A child sensed the fear and clutched a parent's arm. Lena felt it all, but she didn't absorb it. She compartmentalized. First priority, awareness. She counted silently. Distance between the men. The number of passengers standing. The location of crew members. The nearest emergency phone. The time since the cockpit announcement. Everything aligned in her mind like a quiet checklist. One of the men glanced toward the cockpit door. Too often. That told her more than his words ever could. Lena took a small step forward, timing it perfectly between breaths of silence. "Sir," she said gently, her voice steady and professional, "please take your seat. We're still stabilizing after ascent." The words were ordinary. Her tone was not. It carried calm certainty, neither challenging nor submissive. The man turned toward her, clearly irritated, as though he had just noticed her existence. "Stay out of this," he snapped. Several passengers flinched. Lena nodded once. Of course. She stepped back immediately, hands raised slightly in a universal gesture of compliance. No resistance. No hesitation. The man dismissed her and refocused forward. But the moment had served its purpose. She had confirmed something important. He was reacting, not controlling. Lena moved down the aisle again, slowly, checking on passengers the way flight attendants did during turbulence. A reassuring hand on a shoulder. A quiet whisper of, "Please remain seated." A soft smile that said, "You're not alone." With each step, she passed information without words. Calm is contagious. So is panic. She chose calm. In the galley, another crew member stood rigid, eyes full of questions. Lena leaned in, speaking barely above a breath. "Follow protocol. Stay visible. Don't argue." "But," the attendant began. Lena met her eyes. "Trust me." Something in Lena's voice cut through the fear. The attendant nodded. Lena returned to the aisle. The cabin was quieter now. Not because the threat had disappeared, but because people were watching her. They didn't know why, only that something about her presence steadied them. One of the men barked another order. Lena noticed his hands, not shaking, but tight. Controlled fear. That was dangerous, but predictable. She adjusted her position slightly, placing herself where she could see both the aisle and the cockpit door without appearing to do so. Her body language remained neutral, open. Inside her mind, another part of her woke fully. A part trained to think in seconds instead of minutes. She remembered simulators, high-pressure drills, instructors who taught that control wasn't about force, it was about timing. Wait, observe, then act only when the odds favored safety. The intercom crackled briefly, then went silent. The cockpit was sealed. Good. That bought time. A passenger stood suddenly, panic breaking through restraint. "Sit down," one of the men shouted. The man froze, half standing, unsure whether to obey or flee. Lena stepped in smoothly, placing herself between them, not confrontational, not protective. Just present. "Sir," she said softly to the passenger, "please sit. I'll help you." Her hand gestured calmly toward the seat. The passenger obeyed without thinking, relief washing over his face. The man in the aisle glared at her again. "You," he said, "do what you're told." Lena inclined her head slightly. "I am." And she was. Just not in the way he thought. She stepped back, letting the situation breathe. Letting the tension stretch without snapping. The cabin had reached a strange equilibrium, fear held in check by uncertainty, chaos delayed by hesitation. Lena knew this moment well. The pause before decisions. The fragile window where everything could still be saved. She looked down the aisle once more, eyes calm, face unreadable. To everyone else, she was still just a flight attendant. But inside, the pilot was awake. And waiting. The cabin felt unnaturally still. Not quiet, held. Every breath seemed suspended, as if the aircraft itself was listening. Lena stood near the forward aisle, posture unchanged, expression calm. The two men exchanged brief looks. Something wasn't going according to their plan. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. Control was slipping, not through resistance, but through uncertainty. One of them reached for the intercom again. Nothing. The cockpit remained silent. That was when Lena moved. Not quickly, not dramatically. She took one deliberate step forward. Then another. Her shoes made soft contact with the aisle floor, but the sound carried weight. Heads turned. Eyes followed her without anyone realizing why. She stopped just short of the cockpit door. The man nearest her scoffed. "You don't get it," he said, trying to sound dominant. "This is bigger than you." Lena turned to face him fully for the first time. Up close, he noticed something he had missed before. Her eyes weren't pleading. They weren't afraid. They were measuring. "You're right," Lena said evenly. "It is bigger than me." Her voice carried, not loud, not sharp, but it cut through the cabin like a clean line. Passengers leaned forward slightly, instinctively. She reached into the inner pocket of her uniform and removed a small, rectangular card. Not a badge passengers recognized. Not airline issued. She held it at chest level, steady. "I need you to listen carefully," she continued. "Because what happens next depends on whether you choose fear or reason." The man hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. "I'm not a flight attendant," Lena said calmly. A ripple moved through the cabin. "I'm a certified combat pilot," she continued, voice level, "with more flight hours than anyone in this aircraft combined, crew included." Silence fell harder this time. She turned slightly so the passengers could hear her clearly. "I know this aircraft. I know its limits. And I know exactly how much time we have before small mistakes become irreversible ones." The second man laughed nervously. "You expect us to believe that?" Lena didn't answer him. Instead, she pressed a code into the emergency panel beside the cockpit door. The cockpit indicator light shifted. Green. The door opened just a few inches. The captain's voice came through, controlled, professional. "Confirmed," he said. "She's cleared." That was all it took. The laughter died instantly. Lena lowered the card but didn't put it away. "You don't need to do this," she said to the men, not threatening, not begging. "No one here does." One of them swallowed hard. "You think you're in control." The first man snapped, but the edge was gone. Lena met his gaze evenly. "No," she replied. "I think control is already gone. I'm just offering you a way out that doesn't end with regret." She gestured subtly, not toward herself, but toward the cabin. "These people want to go home. So do you. The difference is, I know how to make that happen safely." The man's shoulders dropped slightly. Fear had replaced anger. Lena waited. She didn't rush. She knew this moment, where pride fought survival. Finally, the man exhaled and stepped back. Then sat down. The second followed. The cabin didn't erupt into cheers. Not yet. Lena nodded once toward the cockpit. The door opened fully. She turned to the passengers now, voice gentle again. "Please remain seated. Everything is under control." And this time, they believed her. Minutes later, as the aircraft adjusted course under coordinated command, whispers spread through the cabin. Not panic. Awe. A child tugged at a parent's sleeve. "Is she a hero?" Lena passed by, hearing but not reacting. Heroes didn't matter to her. Responsibility did. As she stepped into the cockpit, the captain looked at her with quiet respect. "Good timing," he said. Lena gave a small nod. Timing is everything. The aircraft flew on, steady, safe, intact. And behind them, fear finally loosened its grip. Because authority hadn't shouted, it had spoken calmly. And everyone listened.